Hi, my name is Amar. I'm a senior econ student at Case Western.
My name is Zach. I'm an incoming first year med student at the CUNY School of Medicine, and welcome to the MSx Podcast, a show about a broad range of topics in medicine, from education to exploring research and contemplating future directions for the field. In each episode, we speak with leaders in the field to learn from their insight and expertise. Today, we have a second year med student at the CUNY School of Medicine interested in orthopedics. His name is Alan Samsonov. Thank you for coming, Alan.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm really humbled to have the opportunity to speak with you, and I really support what you two are doing here. So thank you.
Thanks. We appreciate it. To start off, we just wanted to go back down memory lane, I guess. And considering the fact that you entered an accelerated BSMD program, I was wondering, how did you decide to pursue medicine right out of high school?
It's a really great question. And it's one that a lot of people who go into accelerated programs ask themselves because they have to know for sure at a really young age. But my answer goes back even before high school. I kind of knew when I was really young. So I grew up in a Russian household, and my first book was ironically or unironically an anatomy book that my grandparents got me. And then it was just a lot of visits to the Museum of Natural History. I had a love for dinosaurs and really loved looking at all the dinosaur skeletons and the anatomy. And things just kind of built off of each other. And it moved forward through my grandfather, who taught me how to fish. And at 6 years old, he handed me the knife for the first time. And with full trust, he said, "Clean this fish." Which I did. I scaled it, I gutted it, I cleaned it. But the first thing I did after was I cut into the stomach to see what the fish had eaten. And then I started cutting through all the organs. And my grandpa kind of, at least what he says is he knew then and there that I'd want to do surgery.
Yeah, and I guess relating to that, throughout your time, high school, undergrad and onwards, how did you figure out that orthopedic surgery was the specialty that you were interested in specifically?
Yeah, so a lot of my answers actually go back to my grandparents, and that's just because of how close I was and am. I spent a lot of time in my youth with them. And so my grandfather, aside from being a fisherman, was by occupation a carpenter. And I spent a lot, I mean, honestly, too many of my Saturdays in his carpentry shop with him. And again, at a young age, I was using tools. I was screwing screws. I was hammering nails. I was using saws, I mean, with his supervision. But I was so in love with using my hands to build things that he actually had to allot space in his shop, aside from the kitchens and cabinets that he was building for clients, for things that I built. So it kind of started with that, and then touching back on what I said about how much I loved the dinosaur skeletons. I feel like orthopedics was in my DNA, and it was within me before I realized it. And not to sound corny or anything, but so much of my upbringing supports that. Then I had a few injuries that further cemented the fact that orthopedics really is the most intricate and amazing field out there.
Yeah, so I'd love to learn about maybe your time during your injury. When did the injury happen and what was so formative about it?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, in a few weeks, was my first major injury. So I'm an ice hockey player for my entire life, and I dislocated my shoulder and broke my clavicle playing. It was actually the first game as captain for the college team in the third period, and we were getting beaten really, really badly. And the whole time we were just trying to keep our heads into the game. So I honestly got absolutely folded like a table. Like I ran into a really, really big guy, and my shoulder popped out. It popped back into the bench, and I didn't think much of it. I finished the game, but then scans the next few days showed that I had a pretty big labral tear. So going through surgery, the rehab, I mean, just seeing the entire process through the patient perspective, and also as an athlete and someone interested in orthopedics and sports medicine, I mean, it was really humbling and empowering at the same time. It really made me appreciate the skill level it takes to be not only a competent physician or orthopedic surgeon, but like a literal caregiver. And I was very involved in my care, and I feel like my surgeon used that to amplify his treatment. We worked together, and I mean, the shoulder I genuinely feel is good as new. But lo and behold, a month after being completely cleared by my shoulder doc, I was skiing and I tore my ACL, my left ACL, on the same side as my shoulder. So I was really back in a rut again. I was excited to finally get back to sport, and I kind of, it was like teased in front of me, and then the opportunity to go back to living my active lifestyle was taken away. And that one definitely was more difficult mentally and physically because I just spent the last 6 months recovering. I mean, the journey is not painless, both up here and wherever was injured. Family needs to be involved, and it felt really grim to have to redo the whole process. But again, I found a great doctor who took really good care of me. We formed this excellent doctor-patient relationship. I was really involved, and what I really liked is throughout this whole process, I was getting more and more involved in orthopedics on my own. So I was able to, even though still very rudimentary, I was able to kind of understand the lingo and the logic of what these surgeons were doing, who are obviously very skilled and do these cases every week. So being involved, knowing the anatomy of my injury, the logic behind the reconstruction and how it was done. So it reminded me a lot of being a youngster in my grandpa's carpentry shop, where I had, basically it was my playground. And I was just really excited to understand or try to conceptually take apart what was going to happen inside my own knee. And it honestly made me proud. Not that I injured myself, but it made me proud that I took an active role in understanding what went wrong and applied it to my own passion of orthopedics, hopping back over to the hopefully eventual care side of the team.
Now that we've talked about you being like a patient and you're also at the halfway point of medical school, you kind of have this perfect outsider, insider perspective of like the healthcare industry, right? So what is something that you'd want to change about the system that you're planning to enter in?
So I definitely think that I had a unique role in kind of playing both parts on both ends of the interaction. But through both my clinical experience and my research in orthopedics and the last 2 years of being a patient, I think that one thing that I could really take away is from a positive that I experienced in the last 2 years. When I was a patient for both of my injuries, but particularly for my second one, where I was really, upset with myself and with my body. The fact that my doctor took the time to draw out my injury, draw out the knee, the anatomy, the procedure. And I mean, it may seem childish, like almost, it was basically a cartoon, but it was on the wax paper that I was sitting on the examination table. He just took out a pen, sketched it really quickly, and took a second to ask me, hey, like, do you have questions? I mean, even though I told him that I was interested in orthopedics, the fact that he genuinely took time to make sure that him and I were on one line of communication, and the fact that he took the time to establish that it was a team effort really meant a lot to me. And it's something that I want to take with me when I start practice. And I wish we're more of a part of orthopedics and healthcare in general. So many times the, physicians, they know the right thing to do for their patients, but hey, like, I know that I'm genuinely going to do good. The patients can't 100% appreciate that, but that teamwork, instead of going from I'm offering a service to you, that we will work together. I think that's something that should definitely be happening more often moving forward. And I'm going to take an active part in propelling that.
And along those lines, I know you're talking about your injury before and this whole journey. Med school and life in general is just full of ups and downs. We were wondering just how you approached setbacks or failures, and like what was your mindset during those times, and I guess the light at the end of the tunnel, considering all that was going on.
Yeah. So something that I've always been is I've always relied on a team, whether that's my family or my friends, or sometimes even, a dog, a pet, a fish. It really doesn't matter. Growing up playing hockey, hockey is a sport that you can never win alone. You can be the best player on the ice, by miles, but if the other team works together, it doesn't matter. The game is called. So when things got tough, I was really lucky to have a great support system to lean on and to speak to and just kind of let my emotions out. But there were times where I really, even the support system couldn't understand certain difficulties. So it was really just me alone, thinking in my room. I recall in the first week after my knee surgery, it was crucial for me to keep my knee in full extension. So as the graft sets, I have maximal extension in the range of motion of my knee. And it's very uncomfortable because you can't support your knee from behind. Rather, the only support has to be behind your heel. So it's like keeping your leg elevated just as if it's just like on a chair for hours at a time. And I guess it was one of those, even though this is kind of a microcosm for like potentially much larger issues, it was the fact that my body is telling me this hurts and I don't want it, but my brain is telling me that I need this for the better good, for my future self. It's just, I think it's the discipline, the logos over the pathos, the having the conversation with yourself and addressing the fact that you might not want to do a certain thing, or you might be hurt by a certain someone or a certain event, but always bringing it back to you and saying, hey, I feel this way, or I think this way, but I know that the greater answer is this, or in the long term, I'm going to need to act this way. And that kind of just keeps you grounded, because it's really easy to be distorted or skewed, whether it's in school, extracurriculars, in relationships, in family. So that's what always been my rock.
Yeah, so I'd also love to learn more about like how you created those support systems and best practices for students that are like maybe in a difficult time or having difficulty with school, relationships, etc. Yeah.
Firstly, I think you always have to know your why you are who you are and why you're doing certain things, and not to let your past define you. There is always only one direction, and that's forward. So whether there are difficulties, people who don't wish you well, or classes, topics, I mean, med school is extremely arduous, and even beyond that, just feel like brick walls, impervious brick walls. You have to know your why, and your why is to get through that brick wall. Whatever that may be, everyone's situation is different, but if you have your purpose, if you know why you're doing the things you're doing, then it doesn't matter how difficult a certain task can be, because you will mount your best absolute effort because you're connected to your purpose.
And I guess talking more about med school specifically, since you're almost nearing the end of your second year, we're wondering, like, what are some things you've learned in those first few years that separates people that do and people that don't succeed, in that time?
Yeah, I think a really valuable skill to have in medical school is the ability to stand back up after being knocked down. No one starts medical school a doctor, or even a rotating student. There's going to be way more that you don't know than you know. You're going to feel smaller than you've ever felt at times, dumber than you've ever felt at times. But it goes back to knowing your why and why you're here. So whether that's adjusting your study schedule towards the morning or towards the evening, whether that's somehow enticing yourself to sit and work, or find a peer to work with. I think it's really important to be a successful medical student is just to keep getting up and trying. The first 9 options, the first 9 doors might lead to nothing, an empty room, but that last door will have that answer. It'll have what you're looking for. Unfortunately, a lot of people that I've known, both here at the CUNY School of Medicine and out in other institutions, have come to the conclusion that medical school was too difficult for them, without losing their passion for medicine. I mean, it's different if med school is not for someone, but an inability to cope with the stressors and rigor of medical school. And from listening to a lot of people and learning from other people's experiences, I found that, to reiterate, one of those really important things is just, it's that will to fight. you have to advocate for yourself as a learner, as a student. You have to use the resources you have available to you, whether that's faculty, books, the librarian, even the security guard that opens the door for you late when, you forget your key card. That's all really important, to use everything you have, and also just be extremely nice to everyone, because everyone is there trying their best. Everyone is there to help you and help themselves. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to treat everyone with dignity and love.
Because you said people at like the CUNY School of Medicine and other medical schools that like couldn't cope with the stress of med school, so they had to, like, I'm assuming, drop out. They dropped out without losing their passion for medicine. So is that like pushing out of passionate people, like forcing them to drop out because they couldn't cope with the stress, a problem with like the system itself? Is something being done wrong, or is it like a necessity? Do you need that stress?
Yeah, so that's definitely a difficult question. So if med school were easy, I mean, these are my dad's words. If med school were easy, everyone would be a doctor. So that's whenever I tell him how hard of a time I'm having, he always reminds me. So that's one part of the equation. But the other part of the equation is passion is good, but passion is not enough. You have to do something about that passion. You have to have a will to fight and a will to survive in medical school. In medical school is extremely, extremely difficult. I mean, people who apply in sometimes take years or even an entire degree before applying in. And I feel like it has to be coming from the heart, right? So that's that passion part, but also going back to, kind of the one piece of advice that I would give, or what I was referencing before was, or rather how I cope with things, that it has to be logos over pathos. And I've noted that that quality is very common in successful people, both in and out of medical school, that it's going to be a fight, it's going to be a dirty fight, tooth and nail, but you have to bring it. And if you get knocked down, you get right back up. You go to the gym, you practice, and then you go right back in for the next round.
I guess now that we've talked about some of the rigors of med school, it's a common perception that going to med school is kind of giving away your 20s. And we were just thinking that from what you've seen and what you've experienced, how do you make the most out of time in med school outside of class?
Yeah, so that's definitely something that the high schoolers, going back to your first question, have to bargain, because you do give away a lot of your really, really good years. But so maximizing time out of class, I think that it has to be a non-negotiable, just like a non-negotiable to study and grind, and you have to get your work done before anything else. I don't feel like there is a problem with, some people feel very guilty for taking time off from studies and work. I think it's really important to get away, to do other things, to completely shut the mind away from medicine, because medicine can be like a vacuum. I mean, even experts in their fields are always learning. I mean, you can never learn everything for a test, for a class, for a board exam. So you have to give your mind and your body a break. I mean, we're lectured a lot on mindfulness and wellness and working out and eating, but I think holding on to friends outside of medical school, even though it's obviously great and helpful to have friends within your career and journey, but having friends outside, just being able to completely disconnect, that has been a huge thing for me. I mean, I've been playing hockey, Sunday mornings back in Brooklyn, where I'm from, and not a single word of medicine, just pure hockey. Just a bunch of guys get together, play hockey. The same thing with fishing. I mean, in a good summer, I'd come home from clinic or whatever, or even on my Saturdays, just go fish. Absolutely no thought of medicine. And that disconnect is crucial. I mean, I might even argue to say necessary. I mean, it can be unhealthy to just live, breathe within medicine. And a lot of people, unfortunately, misinterpret that is how to succeed in medical school. And I would argue against that. It's a work hard and then give yourself a break mentality.
So do you think that might be a solution to some of the like stress culture that is often medical school?
Yeah, I think people need to know that it's okay to not be studying 24/7. I mean, we're human. We aren't robots. Um, even I mean, it can be classmate to classmate or upper years to lower years where younger students or incoming students are vulnerable because they don't know how to walk the walk of medical school. So a lot of them try to sprint, and that sprint can be really, really deteriorating. So, I mean, even all the students that I mentor, I tell them, I mean, you're working really, really hard, and that's great, and you see that in your grades. But make sure to take some time. Give your mom a call. Give your brother a call. Go for a walk. I mean, we live in New York, where at this time of the year, sunlight is not taken, should not be taken for granted. I really cannot emphasize how important. And my injuries have given me perspective on that when I was sitting at home for many, many weeks at a time. Just how valuable conversation with someone else can be.
I guess rushing, from personal life more into pursuing the field that you want in the future. We're wondering how, as a med student, do you maximize that involvement? Because let's say you're interested in a field like orthopedics, where there's not much that gets touched upon it in med school. How are you able to maximize that type of involvement outside of class?
Yeah, so our school doesn't have formal orthopedic faculty or a formal orthopedic program. And given that, like you said, Zach, we don't touch much on orthopedics. So it's a really, you have to be a go-getter and you have to seek out opportunities. The way that I did it was I cold emailed a ton of people. I didn't even start in orthopedics. I started in just trauma surgery, trauma and critical care. I kind of got my feet wet with research, with shadowing, just in general, how to walk the walk in the hospital. And then I moved on to orthopedics. And that opportunity would have never presented itself to me if I didn't go out and find it. If I didn't seek out someone to help me look over my cover letter and my CV, and to annoy my brother to let me practice my interview skills with him. I don't know if it's just in medical school in general, or it might just be people our age because we start medical school so early. But we have to understand that it is very, very coming from yourself and not, hey, here is every opportunity you can think of and every scholarship and every this, every that. Every hand shaken has to be your initiative. In fact, as silly as it sounds, one of my mentors once told me, shake every single person's hand in every room you're in for a day. It doesn't matter what setting you're in, but just introduce yourself to everyone. And I did, and it was very, very tiring, and I kind of felt uncomfortable. But the number of connections that one day has brought me, I mean, not only in medicine, but in general, I speak to a lot of those people that I would have never spoken to. And I feel like myself, and I mean, I'm not perfect. I can be better. I can network better. I know that. But I think just knowing the fact that it's on me, I have to introduce myself, both for my benefit and hopefully the person who I'm introducing myself to, his or her benefit. We're establishing a relationship, a connection, where later in industry, that might be a really big deal.
Yeah, I'd love to talk more about maybe one of these connections that have been super meaningful to you and just explore like where it took you.
Yeah, so my first orthopedic experience at NYU, it was, I mean, I was extremely nervous when I first started there 3 years ago. So it was my first, and I'm still working there. So clearly something is going right. But I was extremely nervous to start. I forced myself with a very sweaty hand to shake the surgeon's hand, the fellow's hand, the resident who was working with him at the time. And I had a very, very nervous summer experience. I was the youngest person there by far. I had no knowledge of orthopedics, but I tried to apply some of the principles that I've been sharing with you all today. Just you have to have the will to fight. You have to go out and do it. Something else that I haven't mentioned is you have to be confident. That's what I always tell myself. As silly as it is, I sometimes just go into a bathroom before a big event and just Superman pose. That sounds, it sounds corny. When I first heard of it, it was corny, but I found that it's really helped me because, just even puffing your chest out to think like, I belong here, I can do it. It's been huge. So after that summer, I learned a tremendous amount, and I got invited back to keep working with the group, which I have. And from there, it's blossomed into multiple research projects, a few publications, a few conferences, all that I've been humbled and blessed to work on. I've met some absolutely outstanding people, innovators, geniuses in the field, ambitious students at my level, younger than me, older than me. And that experience is the most meaningful to me and will always be the most meaningful to me because it confirmed that I want to do orthopedics. It showed me that I felt like I belonged. It felt like walking into my hockey locker room growing up. Just my teammates there have my back, and we're all here for a common cause.
Yeah, so I guess, thank you so much for your time here. Do you have any final words of wisdom or parting advice for anyone that's trying to do, anything in medicine, find their passion or, pursue something they're passionate about?
Yeah, for sure. You never know until you try. Whatever it is, shadow a doctor, speak to a professor, attend a lecture, sign up for an online class, try a new food, whatever it is, try a new sport, a hobby. You never know. It doesn't matter who says what. You for yourself will never know until you try. So be open to new opportunities, get good at shaking hands, and just have a smile on your face because we're all really lucky to be where we are and to be trying to move forward in each of our respective paths. So just remember your why, be happy, and we really are blessed to be where we are.
Thank you so much, Alan, for your time. And this has been the MSx Podcast.